Now I'd like to turn it over to three of our LEEP team members. First is Duncan McBranch, Program Director for Entrepreneurship and Mission Innovation at Los Alamos National Laboratory. Then you'll hear from Molly Chernichek, who does Entrepreneur Programs, Strategy, and Coordination at the Feynman Center for Innovation at Los Alamos National Laboratory. And finally, Mason Martinez, Technical Business Development Specialist with the Center for Collaboration and Commercialization at Sandia National Laboratories. Duncan, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Lindsay, can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Great. Well, I'm happy to be here today, Duncan McBranch, and I run a set of programs at the laboratory that connect our entrepreneurial scientists with technical innovators in the outside community and efforts to grow that community. So welcome all of you today to our call. If you're on the call today, it's because you're a potential deep tech entrepreneur interested in working with one of the national laboratories to grow your product into a next generation solution. And so I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about the LEEP program and some of what's unique. And then I'll turn it over to my colleague Molly to talk a little more about the process and curriculum. And Mason will tell you a little bit about the first year that Sandia is joining this year as a partner for the first year. So our program is modeled after other embedded entrepreneur programs in the DOE system, and we've interacted extensively with those programs at Berkeley and Argonne and Oak Ridge to design our program. We've launched it last year and have our first cohort. Those first cohort is on the call with us today, and they'll be available to answer your questions later when we get to the Q&A. So this is for cohort 2, our second year of the program. And part of what makes us unique compared to the other embedded entrepreneur programs is our focus on a range of hard technology areas that underpin national security. So Los Alamos and Sandia both have mission areas that cover national security broadly, and the underpinning technology areas for our missions are also increasingly parts of the contested global economy. And so we're trying to grow deep tech and hard tech entrepreneurs here. This slide shows a bit about also what's different about our program from other accelerator programs. And the chief one of those is that the program itself involves funding that brings a technical expert from one of the national laboratories to work on your product demonstration. And so that access to world-leading expertise is unique. And there's also a stipend that helps defray the initial first couple of years of your company, and that looks together like roughly $500,000 of non-dilutive funding. Together with that, we have an extensive business and investor mentorship that will help you hone your pitch to end up with a fundable company and a technical demonstration of a product with a unique product market fit. Next slide, please. So we're going to tell you today a little more about how the program works. I'll talk at least broadly to the technical areas that we're seeking to assist in our innovators, and talk about the application process itself. Go to the next slide, please. So I'm going to hand it over here to Molly to talk about a little bit about the process and the curriculum.
Thanks, Duncan. So we'll cover a little bit about what our program is about and what to expect in the selection process for cohort 2, and how we've developed this program with deep tech innovators in mind. So we're looking for innovators who have vision, dedication, know-how, and momentum to get their technology to market. Our job is to set you up with technical experts at Los Alamos or Sandia, as Duncan mentioned, industry, as well as with industry and business experts and deep tech investors, where our goal is to help support you in your path to a first product demonstration, early customer adoption, and funding. Our efforts are focused on helping you address the gaps in your current technology, product, and business development with specific training topics. And then thirdly, you know, we are aware the investment community expects deep tech startups to identify a strong and unique product market fit that offers a pathway to company growth and success. And so with this in mind, we have built a curriculum of topics and mentors who help our innovators target key technical features in their product development and match them to market needs and business milestones. Next slide, please. So we divide our training areas into three main topics. First is communications, market landscape, and product plan, as well as business model and financials. Our goal when we get people in is to help you update your investor deck in one pager. We put our innovators in front of friendly investors, as we call them, in your technology and market segments, who give you feedback and suggestions to make your investments more relevant to them and their colleagues. Our current LEEP innovators can talk more about this process and how it's impacting their fundraising strategies thus far. We are also planning a trip to the Bay Area to introduce the cohort to several more impactful investors later in the year to help them build their investor network. We put a strong focus on product design and understanding the market opportunity as mentioned. Today, we just kicked off the product design phase of our curriculum. Our innovators each spent an hour with 3 product design specialists. Those specialists will return with 2 extensive training sessions that address the needs and gaps in our innovators' product design plans over the next 2 months. And then the last part of the training that you see here that has to do with company capital strategy, sales strategy, and such, we find that those topics tend to be more one-on-one as each of our innovators are a little bit different in what their needs are in their current timing and the status of their company. So we really try to make sure that they have the expertise they need when they need it as well. Next, please. So we just want to give you a little bit of insight into New Mexico. That is one of the requirements of this program, is to come here for 2 years. This state there is really in a good place right now for deep tech investors and opportunity. There's a lot of investing going on. There's a lot of exciting things. The New Mexico spaceport being one that's really gaining a lot of momentum and excitement around the increase in space traffic and opportunities. We have a great biotech community as well. Anyway, it's a great state. Go ahead, Lauren. We encourage you to learn more about the state, and whether you like art or recreation or just doing more tech, this is a great place for you. Next.
I think this goes
Back
back
to you,
over
Duncan.
to me. So yes, thanks. So for those of you who have visited New Mexico before, then you'll know what's part of what's special about being here. And those of you who have not visited New Mexico, you're in for a treat when you arrive. So the next few slides, I'm going to talk about some of the technical areas that we're seeking and the capabilities that we'll try to match. So again, a key component of our selection process is to make sure that the technology area that you're developing has a strong connection to an area that we have unique expertise. So you get a member of your team on the product side that is deeply expert at some of these core areas. And oftentimes these areas of expertise are hard to find. And sometimes that's not the first thing you want to hire in your company if you're just getting started. So first area of this is advanced materials and manufacturing. And some at the bottom of each of these slides are some potential application areas in terms of what innovations we're seeking that might couple well with the capabilities that we have here at the lab. And in each of these areas, there's the people, the experts who are working on programs in these areas, and then there's also unique facilities. So each of the laboratories has several thousand researchers, and so the ability to tap this rich network of research is part of what's unique about the program. And so starting with advanced materials and manufacturing, first, we look at materials in extreme conditions. So unique materials that are able to withstand conditions that are extremes of temperature, space, or other environments that are unique. The ability to nanostructure materials or systems to have unique functions. And we have a joint center with Sandia and Los Alamos called the Center for Integrated Nanotechnology that has a wide range of unique equipment that our innovation partners can have access to. And then materials modeling itself, oftentimes the performance of materials can be predicted and modeled at great detail, and many of those constitutive models have been developed at the labs. Go to the next slide, please. In areas of artificial intelligence and advanced computing, again, we're looking at applying these topics to commercial problems. We often apply them to government-focused problems. But one of the key areas where we develop expertise is around what we call science-informed machine learning. So using large data sets around physical systems where there are physical or chemical or biological laws that govern the behavior of the systems, and then you're trying to predict the behavior in commercially relevant environments. And so just a couple of examples there. We've done things like harvest seismic data, historical seismic data, to get a better shot at predicting earthquakes and when we'll get a major earthquake resulting from what may be a very minor tremor. We've also done work in predicting the flow of oil wells that are producing with fracking, and using the subsurface conditions to predict the performance of the well out into the future based on historical production parameters. There's a wide range of innovation right now in computing platforms, things like quantum computing, neuromorphic computing, and our staff is at the frontier in those because we try to design those systems to solve unique national security problems. And then the simulations themselves, large-scale simulations of these physical systems often have dedicated code packages that have been developed over many years. And so these are things that are difficult to build from scratch if you're just getting started. Next slide, please. In the area of biotechnology and bioscience, and we do a large amount of work in bioinformatics and modeling, and we also have a significant expertise on the experimental side in biochemistry and structural biology. And so we can help accelerate both the modeling from genomics to proteomics and other areas that are emerging, and also in bringing modeling to predict the performance of new technologies and human systems. And oftentimes in biology, there are massive data sets involved, and this is another area where machine learning is quite relevant. Next slide, please. In the area of space systems, both laboratories have been deeply involved in developing payloads for orbital missions for over 50 years. And so the design and testing of advanced instruments that get launched into space is a core capability, and the facilities to test and validate the performance of these payloads before they're launched Then we also have the ability to do, on-system mission monitoring after deployment. As Molly mentioned earlier, there's a New Mexico spaceport, which is the country's only inland spaceport, which offers some unique advantages, particularly for suborbital launch, where you can launch, test a payload, and then recover the payload after launch, all on a secure site next to White Sands Missile Range. And then looking for applications for computation and data analysis in space, where you're actually doing the computing in space using for a variety of sensor systems. And that minimizes the need to upload and download massive streams of data through limited bandwidth systems. In each of these areas, in space systems in particular, there's a very rich ecosystem in New Mexico around the Air Force Research Lab, the 2 national laboratories, and the New Mexico Spaceport. And so we're looking for innovators who contribute to that ecosystem and help us strengthen that here. And final slide, next, talks about clean energy transition, which is a new area for us this year, and very timely in the the current environment, with a focus, very strong focus on the federal side for accelerating the technology development that will wean the country from fossil fuels as a primary energy source, and to focus on carbon zero technologies. And sort of a sober reminder right now that the national security implications of energy have never been more apparent to anyone than we're seeing today. And to the extent that we can accelerate that clean energy transition, it also positions us to be globally independent from energy politics. So broad range of potential application areas, and Mason will talk a little bit more later about things that are more specific to Sandia. The Sandia cohort participants are sought primarily in this area this year. There's in addition to the broader topics of clean energy, we'll focus on things like hydrogen. There's a considerable amount of funding right now on the federal side to accelerate hydrogen hubs across the country. And there's a 4-state Western state collaboration, including New Mexico, to build a hydrogen hub here. And so we're really trying to foster local companies in particular that are seeking to develop new technologies there. Coupled with that, for New Mexico, carbon capture, utilization, and storage is quite important. We have a high availability of natural gas, and so for us to use that in a zero carbon way, we need to capture and utilize the carbon as a resource and not just as a waste stream. So that is a quick run through of the technical areas. We expect there will be a lot of questions on this, and one of the most important parts of our selection process is making sure we've got a strong match. And so as we go forward, we encourage questions from the applicants, and happy to try to do that. Part of what we do in the selection process is the matchmaking to make sure we've got a strong collaboration built with a staff member who's interested in your problem. Let's go to the next slide. And I'll hand it back over to Molly. Thanks.
Thanks, Duncan. So on to a lot more about who we're looking for, and hopefully I'll give you some insight, and please do continue to ask your questions. So if you're looking for a seed or an A funding right now, is in your, it's in your headlights, but you need to be closer to an advanced demonstration or prototype. You could be a good fit for this program. If you're just starting out, you may be too early. If you have an A round already, you are likely too advanced. So in terms of the funding area, that's how we look at it. we look at every application individually. So I'm not saying it covers everybody. You know, if you're needing to assess specialty facilities or equipment to advance, test, and validate your technology, this is a good program for that. If you're trying to figure out what your product is going to be and how early interested customers will use it, again, this is a good time, a good type of program for you. If you're not quite sure yet where your beachhead market is to launch your first product, but you really are figuring out a lot about markets in general, again, we may be a good match for you. And so what we're looking for is to see how well you've thought out, you know, your technology and your business roadmap so far in terms of what you need to accomplish technically and business-wise to get to the next phase, whether that is receiving additional funding, contracting with your first customer, or hiring one or more team members. So the criteria here is expected, as you see on the slide, so I'm not going to really cover that. But what I want to tell you what some of the things that caught our attention in last year's proposal. So first of all, a clear and concise vision of your product is important. With so many technical topics that we support, your proposal may be in front of someone who's not a cutting edge, you know, synthetic biologist. So if you spend several paragraphs on how you're approaching strain engineering, we may not realize that you are working on a recipe for the best synthetic green chili additive in the world. So please let us know what your product or application is going to be, even if it still is more on the conceptual side. And secondly, please make sure where there are questions about your technology that you give a description that, again, a diverse audience will understand. We realize that it's difficult sometimes to figure out what the national applicant is doing because we have a lot of scientific and technical descriptions on our website that do not necessarily make sense to a diverse audience either. So again, let us know what you are looking for in terms of help. And, you know, is it testing and validating something? Is it algorithm development support or access to data? Be as specific as you can in the question that we asked you of what you're looking for technical support and help. And then really let us know what you've accomplished that shows that you have the fortitude to push through on your product vision. We don't expect people to have had much, and in some cases, maybe no experience running a company, but we do want you to show us how you found success in the past on doing something that was really challenging, such as what you're doing now. Lauren, next, please. Duncan just covered the technology areas. The two really important things in this selection criteria that are must-haves are you need to be a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident, and once you are chosen, we will ask for proof. And then we are, you know, we're here in the business of matchmaking. So, you know, while it's a really fantastic time to be starting a company or moving a company to the next phase in New Mexico, and we really want you to be here in New Mexico, committed for 2 years. We hope it'll be longer, but there's no requirement past the 2 years. But we do want you to be here while you're collaborating technically with us as well as on your business growth. Next, Lauren. So now this is our selection timeline. As you all know, the applications are open. They will close April 25th at midnight. And Lindsay can correct me if I'm wrong, but that is Mountain Standard Time. And virtual interviews will begin in June. And you'll be notified one way or the other. And then the next, please. If you get through our virtual interview process, then we have what's called an alignment workshop. We will pair you with different types of researchers to determine where there is synergy for collaboration. You know, there may be multiple people that can help you. There may be only one or two. So we really work on you getting that figured out on our side and on yours. And if you get through that and we find a really good match, then we look at semifinal interview, and then you do well in that, and then we invite you to the final pitch day where we bring in our strategic leadership council, other reviewers and staff who determine the final selection. Next. You will hear the cohorts will be officially announced in November with the usual press releases, bios, and things. The announcement will come after you have agreed to be part of cohort 2. We have a lot of support and resources to help you figure out what you need to do to relocate if you are not a New Mexico company. And then we will onboard you in January, and you will begin the training curriculum as we are finishing up the collaboration agreements with the national laboratory that you'll be working with. Next. I'm going to turn it over to Mason Martinez, our colleague at Sandia. Mason?
Great, thank you, Molly. So I'm Mason Martinez, working in Sandia's Technology and Economic Development Department, and a member of Sandia's staff that is leading the partnership with New Mexico LEEP. And Sandia is really excited to be a member of New Mexico LEEP for the first year, being the second cohort. And similar to Los Alamos, Sandia National Laboratories has state-of-the-art facilities across engineering and research portfolios that can provide innovators in the LEEP program with access to scientific capabilities and technical expertise in the areas specifically of alternative and renewable energy, as Duncan mentioned. Specifically, Sandia's renewable energy program has more than 20 user facilities which conduct R&D that builds on many of Sandia's core strengths, including materials development, analysis, as well as testing of high temperature systems. So you can see the 6 areas of major contributions to the nation's energy security covered here, including grid modernization, renewable energy and distributed energy technology, EV charging, hydrogen, battery storage optimization, and carbon capture utilization and storage. So located in Albuquerque, New Mexico, Sandia provides geographic proximity to Los Alamos National Labs by a quick 2-hour drive. And in partner with the New Mexico LEEP program, Sandia can help further integrate New Mexico LEEP innovators into the innovation ecosystem in New Mexico by providing direct physical proximity to the capital, resources, and business development expertise that exists in Albuquerque. So we look forward to being a part of this program. And as New Mexico LEEP continues to grow its impact across the state, Sandia looks forward to growing its engagement and recruitment of innovators that focus on deploying technologies to address national and global challenges. With that, I'll pass it off to you, Duncan.
Thanks, Mason. And last couple of slides before we get to the questions. Just a graphic representation of the ecosystem. We're here in the southern end of the Rocky Mountains in the west, but we really connect to a national ecosystem on both coasts. On the East Coast, really focusing a lot on federal and other applications in the DC area, in the emerging National Activate program that started at Cyclotron Road, and then extensive interactions across our university partners, University of California and Texas A&M University as well. And so part of that will involve, some travel to both coasts and to targeted venues that are appropriate for your innovation to meet potential customers and investors. Next slide, please. So I just want a quick introduction to our Strategic Leadership Council. These are the core of our business expertise and network that have agreed to be part of our selection process, and they're going to be the judges for the finals pitch event in September. Victoria Slivkoff, who has been leading the Extreme Tech Challenge, formerly led the entrepreneurship programs at the University of California, and she's just joined as a managing partner for a new venture fund. Juanita Tuttle at Tramway Ventures, longtime New Mexico entrepreneur in biotechnology, and leads her own venture fund now, and strong connections both to the New Mexico and national biotech communities. Jim Hunt at Lavrock out of McLean, Virginia, one of the founders of InQtel originally when that was started, and deep networks in tech-based companies that focus on national security for government applications. Alex Luce, Creative Ventures in Berkeley, a materials PhD and clean tech innovator, and strong part of the clean tech venture community in California. Sig Hampel Arias, who's now a member of the staff here, but for several years was working with In-Q-Tel at one of their data and artificial intelligence machine learning centers. Richard Rose, who's a serial entrepreneur and healthcare executive here in New Mexico, looking to grow the New Mexico biotechnology portfolio. And Richard Sudak, who's a successful angel investor, formerly ran the innovation programs at UC Irvine, is retired from that now, and lives in Montana, but he's really helped us focus and has been a strong contributor to our training curriculum with Molly. Next slide. So you've met me and Molly and Mason. This is the broader part of our team. New Mexico LEEP is a collaboration with Los Alamos Commerce and Development Corporation, which is a nonprofit in Los Alamos aimed at economic development. And Lindsay Mapes is our program manager for NM-LEEP. Lauren McDaniel's the executive director, and Ren Herman is the Chamber of Commerce director in Los Alamos County. Marianne Johnston works and leads the technology engagement and entrepreneurship programs at the Feynman Center for Innovation, which is our tech transfer organization, and she's also the deputy division leader for that organization. And Patricia Knighton is the director of the Arrowhead Center, which is the innovation center at New Mexico State University, and a deep network in New Mexico, helping us focus on partnerships here in the state. And at Sandia, Mason speaking today, and then David Kiston, our counterpart in strategy and operations, helping us design this joint program. So strong team you'll be joining, and a commitment to helping you succeed in your business. Next slide, please. And I'm happy to say we've got our cohort 1 colleagues here today on the call. Christina Trujillo at T Neuropharma, who's developing diagnostics and treatments for Alzheimer's. Cliff Chan, who's partnering at our Center for Integrated Nanotechnology, developing a miniaturized approach to LIDAR. And Shrikant Kodabayina, who's collaborating with our space modeling team to do predictive tools for space weather and radiation events that could affect satellites in space. So those three are here on the line. We're going to go next to questions, and Lindsay's going to direct the first few questions to our cohort 1 members. And please put other questions in the chat. We'll be looking at those, and we'll head to the Q&A. So thanks everybody for your attention, and Lindsay, over to you.
Thanks, Duncan. So again, if anyone has questions either about the LEEP program or the application process that you would like answered now, go ahead and type those questions in the chat, and the chat icon is located in the bottom of your screen. So we'll start with a couple of questions from for our cohort. Christina, we'll start with you. What have you gotten out of the LEEP training thus far, the curriculum thus far, and how is it helping you move your startup forward?
So I would say one of the most important things is, I think at the very beginning, Duncan had said they pair you up with friendly, we'll go with friendly investors to pitch to. And that has been really helpful, because you can find a template on how to make a pitch deck anywhere. And you put it together and you're like, oh, my pitch deck is beautiful and perfect. And then you go pitch to Life Science Angel and they rip you to shreds. And that's helpful. And then you go pitch to someone else and they tell you completely different advice, someone else slightly different advice. But what's really helpful about that is that the mentors see all of that. And they help me to understand, well, what are they really concerned about? What are the common threads of what they didn't like, and how to really take that feedback from all these different friendly investors that are watching my pitch and to really get to the root of how to make it better. So I think that's been one of the most helpful aspects.
Great, thank you. Srikanth, we'll turn to you next. Shri, how did you identify the researcher at Los Alamos National Laboratory that you wanted to work with? And secondly, what do you hope to gain from that collaboration?
Thank you so much, Lindsay. We were in the niche tech area. Basically, we are working with Space Force. We were at an end customer demonstration and got an opportunity to look at a key research that was published by Los Alamos researcher. So we later approached that researcher and asked if he's willing to collaborate with us. And then fortunately, we got to know about the LEEP program. And then we collaborated together and submitted our application, and then had a long-standing solution from them.
Great, thank you. Cliff, we'll move on to you last but not least. What attracted you to the LEEP program to relocate to New Mexico? And then also, can you explain what work you're doing at CINT, the Center for Integrated Nanotechnology?
Okay, so I think what's unique with the LEEP program is that in addition to having access to the lab facility at the CINT, the Center for Integrated Nanotechnology at Los Alamos, the program provides in-kind funding that enables us to get support from Los Alamos scientists in fabricating and testing our prototype. So we are a small startup with a small team. So these resources are really helpful in which they help us to speed up our product development. And of course, as an accelerator, LEEP has a nice training program to help us develop our company and our products and to connect to us to investors. And finally, New Mexico is closely connected with the Air Force and Space Force and with multiple ways to reach out to Air Force program managers here. So we see that there are really lots of opportunities for our company in New Mexico. And for us, we are developing a line of it for 3D sensing based on photonic integrated technology. So we primarily use the CINT user facility to fabricate and test our prototype designs.
Okay, thank you, Cliff. So we have quite a few questions coming in from the audience. We'll start with Duncan first. Duncan, is a restructuring of social media to create a better way to manage misinformation, including distributed ledger to geolocation, is that deep enough to qualify as deep tech?
You know, at first glance, I would say yes. You know, it's certainly a persistent problem is how do you identify and eliminate misinformation in different types of data. We do a lot of that type of work in things like looking at geospatial intelligence and looking for, you know, fakes in videos and things like that. And so I think, you know, we'd have to learn a little bit more about the sizes of the data streams you're looking at and the types of innovation that you'd like to apply to see if we would be unique in helping you there, because we want to make sure that you know, if that's something that is easily found or more conveniently found in the private sector, that you know, we don't try to reinvent that here, but we try to identify things that are unique in one of the labs that can really kickstart the progress for that application.
Thank you, Duncan. Molly, the next question I think is for you. As a fellow, can my company also receive and apply for R&D funding from other sources?
Yes, it can, and you can, and all of our companies, or at least two of them, are. So there are a few little details. The devil is in the details, but yes, it's possible to do both.
Thank you. Duncan, we'll go back to you for this one. For existing companies, what stage of company is eligible to apply?
So, you know, again, we want a company that's early enough to benefit from the set of resources that are brought to bear for the program, but not so early that you're completely new. And so, just by way of example, the 3 successful cohort members this year, 2 of the 3 had SBIR funding already. The other had at least some initial private investment. All 3 had some experience in pitching to private sector investors, and they all 3 had formed companies prior to applying. And so, however, we also had several companies that they had already received substantial Series A funding investments that applied, and we felt that those were a little bit too far down the road. They wouldn't benefit as much from the program. So we're trying to look for that balance. It's particularly challenging in deep tech, just because the venture networks are just starting to pay attention to that sector, and typically the technology development cycles are longer. So a key factor that we'll look to is that in the 2 years of the program, can you make a substantial advance towards a product demonstration with the technical resources that you'll have access to at the labs, and designing that joint development program so that it has the maximum impact is a key criteria for selection.
Okay, thank you, Duncan. Molly, we'll go back to you. Does participation in New Mexico's Trigger program, TRGR, does that disqualify applicants to apply or to gain admission into the LEEP program?
Fortunately, I have the head of the Trigger program here at Los Alamos with me. Mary Ann's going to answer that question.
Hello, everyone. So the Trigger program is also known as the Technology Readiness Initiative within the state of New Mexico. It does not eliminate it, but in some cases, especially at Sandia and in year 2 of the Los Alamos, that is the funding for the LEEP CREDA. So if you're already participating in a Trigger, then we can figure that out based on how that selection happens. So there could be that you can't participate probably in both at the same time.
Thank you, MJ. Mary Ann Johnston from Los Alamos. We'll go back to Duncan for this one. Is human physiology, like stress tracking, performance optimization based on psychology and machine learning, is that an area of interest for the LEEP program?
I would say potentially yes. The one caveat there is just the source of data. For companies that look to do substantial clinical development or testing on human subjects, you'll need to have access to data sources, through other sources. We wouldn't be providing human subjects data or samples through the laboratories. For that, we would encourage you to link it to a deeper problem than just predicting behavior. And we want to, so for example, in the military looks a lot at understanding precursors to compromised performance for members of the military. And so tools that might enhance our ability to predict when humans hit the end of their rope, for example, could have important implications for members in uniform. If it's aimed purely at consumer behavior, we'd probably be a little less interested.
Thank you, Duncan. Molly, we'll swing back to you for this one. How much of the company needs to relocate to New Mexico? Is it sufficient for a key member of the team to be located there? For example, a CEO or COO?
Well, I think for us, what's most important is that whoever is here is the technical collaborator. Again, we prefer people to be here. We will look at different options, but it does help to be here for the events as well as for the technical collaboration. And part of the requirement for New Mexico LEEP is the person that applies needs to be the
innovator because it's a fellowship and not necessarily investment in the company. It's an investment in the person who's developing the business and doing the technical development within the company.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. We're really trying to grow the ecosystem here in New Mexico. So a commitment to come and build and stay in New Mexico is an important part of what we're looking for.
Thank you. Mason, we've got a question for you about energy. Is nuclear energy production a topic that would be entertained by LEEP?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question, Edgar. So again, from kind of a broad overview, nuclear energy is in the portfolio of Sandia. So from a materials analysis standpoint, I can say yes, that is an element that we can explore. However, I think to Duncan's earlier point, getting kind of the nuances and the weeds and seeing where there's a PI match and where there's capabilities that could advance whatever technology you're working on forward would be the sweet spot. So as a broad answer, yes, but it would encourage to apply and explore further options there.
Yeah, maybe just add to that, Mason. Part of the frontier today in nuclear energy is the ability to simulate with a physical model the performance of a complete system. And so NuScale is the first one that's gotten approval through the Nuclear Regulatory Agency to use simulations to validate the safety of their systems. And that's a revolutionary change in how nuclear energy is done. And so both of the laboratories have extensive modeling capabilities. And so if there's a way that we can bring modeling to accelerate a nuclear innovation, that's very much in our wheelhouse.
Here's a question for Molly. We have listed many disciplines as eligibility requirements. So what makes a greater impact in the application process? Scientific experience or business experience?
Oh, a chicken and an egg question. I will say you can do either. If you're really solid scientists, you're going to be putting probably a little bit more effort on the business side. And if you're more of a business person, at some point, you're probably going to have to bring in more technical people. I will say in our current cohort, we have a mix of both. And so it's working for both. We've got, some that are more business savvy and some that are more technically, on the research track. They're more comfortable in that, but they're hiring people or consultants or just spending more time on the part that they aren't. This is where it is important to have, at least it helps to have a partnership between having somebody with more business experience and somebody having with more technical. But as MJ said, you've got to pick the key person that you want to interact in this program to be the lead. And it could be a CTO. Anyway, I'll let anyone else jump in who wants to.
Anybody else? We've got quite a few more questions, so I'll move on to the next question. Mary Ann Johnston, this might be a question for you, and we might need more information for you to answer this question. If a company licenses a technology from one of the two labs, could a scientist participate in the LEEP program? Do you need more information to answer that question?
No, I can answer that question.
Okay.
So if somebody licenses the technology from the lab and they apply for LEEP, that scientist can participate as the principal investigator for the CRADA within the LEEP program, but there would need to be somebody else that was the innovator that applied to the LEEP program that would be working with that scientist. The other thing is, and it depends on your specific application, but that's also what the Trigger Technology Readiness Initiative is. And so that would be just the license and then the CRADA or a tech assisted project that they could do if they were a company within the state of New Mexico. So there's a number of different ways that could be addressed when you have a license from either Los Alamos or Sandia National Labs. Did that,
Yeah.
I want to make sure that answers the question.
MJ, let me just add to that real quick, and then maybe if there's a clarification, we can do that. But you know, we have other programs that MJ and team are working with. So if one of our scientists wants to spin out a company and license it, we've got a set of programs to help and assist that. And so this program isn't really designed to foster the scientist as a individual stepping outside the lab. But if there's a situation where that could be a possibility, we'd like to know about it and help however we can.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification. And thanks, MJ. I think this is a Duncan question. Does the LEEP program have an interest in the semiconductor manufacturing industry?
Certainly, yes. And the key there is what aspect of the work is unique to what can be done at the lab. So just by way of example, one of this year's cohort had a really unique design for a device that involved both electronics and photonics. And so we were able to help by designing tests that would test that interface between optics and electronics in a way that could really validate the performance of a small device, a few pixels, for example. But we don't really have the expertise to do large-scale semiconductor prototyping or manufacturing, and so we wouldn't be the place to come for you know, major new processes that would push the state of the art in semiconductor manufacturing. But we could potentially help in design and validation of the materials performance or a small prototype device, and then we would look to connect you to industry players that could help scale that technology.
Okay. One more question. I think this might be a Marianne question again. I'm going to read the whole thing. Is infrastructure like SCIF space available as a potential item on a CRADA? And if so, would there be any potential space for a rack of equipment, which includes prototype testing for moving large real-time mission data sets up and down the classification chain? There's another question, a follow-up question to that about the
Lindsay,
CRADA. Yeah.
Lindsay, let me just take that because I just see that on the screen. So
Okay.
they're talking about the availability of a SCIF, which is a secure compartmented facility for handling classified information. Yes, we do have SCIFs at both labs, and there's also a SCIF at the Air Force Research Lab. You know, by definition, the need for a SCIF means that you're doing highly sensitive research, and so it's an area that we'd have to know more about to understand. You know, what are the sponsor sensitivities? What's the exact areas of innovation? And so, but we just encourage a follow-up discussion on that.
Okay, thanks, Duncan.
Say the access to the classified network. So I would say probably not in the context of this, the LEEP CRADA. We would require all the work that we would done in the CRADA to be unclassified. You know, if there's a opportunity for a significant innovation in classified systems, we probably have other programs for that. And so it's not that we don't want to learn more about it. It just may not be that New Mexico LEEP is the right one. Again, the goal for the LEEP program is to grow commercial innovations around technologies that where we have strengths at the labs. And if the primary customers are going to be government or security agencies, then there's probably other programs that are going to be more appropriate for that.
Thanks, Duncan. Well, it's been an hour. Thank you for spending your hour with us. We didn't get to all of your questions, and I apologize. For those of you that have questions that you would like answered that we did not get to answer here, I've just chatted my email address. Please send me an email, and we're happy to answer questions, either via email, or if it is something that requires a more detailed response, we can set up a phone conversation. Again, thank you for your time. Thanks for attending our webinar. I will send out a link to the recorded webinar in the next couple of days to everyone that attended and registered. And after we end this webinar, a pop-up window will appear with a short survey. Thank you in advance for doing our little survey. And most importantly, don't forget the application deadline, which is Monday, April 25th at 11:59 p.m. Mountain Time. We look forward to seeing your application. Thanks so much.